Hello everybody, and welcome to the 4th episode of Java tutorials for Minecraft. In the last episode, I said we would be making a region protection type of plugin, similar to WorldGuard. However, I forgot that there are some other basic skills that are needed in order to be able to make that type of plugin. So the one that we're going to be going over today is configuration files. So the fun thing about configuration files is that it allows you to store data through reloads and the server stopping. So it's very convenient when you're trying to save values, like if something's enabled or disabled, or perhaps the name of something. So what we'll do today is we'll make a simple config, and actually we'll use our code from last episode, and instead of using a built-in array list, what we'll do is we'll actually use a config list. So say, and I'm actually going to change one more thing. Material res equals material dot redstone block. So I'm just gonna make this a little bit more smoother. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say here, instead of allowed to walk dot add, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna say get config dot add, or get config dot set, and we're gonna say e dot get player, like get UUID, so this will protect against the name changes, and we'll set this to true. So this gives us a boolean here. So what we can now do is we can go over here and we can say get config get boolean e dot get player dot get UUID, and there's a little bit of an error here. I see. We need to change this to .toString. Let's see, .toString. That's because the name of it has to be a string. So we can say if this is false. So actually, let me back up a second. When you have a boolean, so if I have boolean test equals false, I can say if test, and that's the same thing as saying if test equals true. This is just more practical because not only are you checking the value of test, but then you also have to check to see if it's true. Whereas if you just do this will just say if it's true. We can say if not test, so if test is false, then we can do that. So that's why we can go over here and we can say if the boolean storing config for that player UUID is false, then we're going to say you are now allowed to walk, and we're going to go ahead and set that value for them to true. And then we're going to and then we're going to come down here and we're going to say the exact same thing, but this time without the exclamation mark. So now we're saying if the block is that block and they are allowed to walk in the config, then it's going to take that, and we're going to copy and paste the same thing from up here down here. So now we've replaced our array list up here, so we can actually remove this array list. And now everything is config based, except for this part right here. I forgot. We can actually copy this, paste that there, and then all we have to do is change true to false. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and export this as tutorial. And then we're going to go over here, go into plugins, take that out, just like that. And actually I'm going to have to re-export that anyway because I forgot to change the plugin.yml to have a 4 in there. So we'll just export that again. And anytime you edit the plugin.yml, you always have to refresh. Otherwise, the server will say plugin.yml out of sync of file system. So now that we have that all in place, we can go ahead and start the test server just by doing this. And I'm going to go ahead and load up Minecraft. And I'm just going to make a cut here, and I'll be back once everything's loaded up. Alright, so everything's back up, and we're going to log into the testing server, and then we're going to log back into the same area we were before. Let me do weather, sun, or clear rather, and then what we'll see here is we still can't walk over here. If we check console, no errors. And if we walk over here, check console for errors, there's no errors. And now if we go into our plugins folder, you'll see there's no file here. And that's because we never told it to make a file. So that means whenever we walk over these diamond blocks here, it'll still work, but there's no physical config for us to change. So if I grab that redstone block and I walk over the redstone block now, it says I'm not allowed to walk, and now I can't walk anymore, but now I can walk. So even though we haven't made a physical config for it to be in, it'll still work because there's an internal config, but yeah, it would be nice to have a physical config to manually add people to. For instance, if you had a staff member and you wanted to add them to that list instead of having these blocks here. So what we'll do is we'll go and modify our code a little bit. And we'll go ahead and say, we'll come over here and we'll make a new file called config.yml. And then we don't actually need to have anything in here. We can just go ahead and refresh here. And then in our on enable, we just want to say get config dot options dot copy defaults true. Copy defaults and then save config, and then that'll work for us. And something that we don't really have to do, but something that we can do for a little bit of insurance, you can just go ahead and throw a save config at the end of our config set statements. Go ahead and export. And I'm going to move the folder over a little bit, and I'll see whenever we reload. Now you can see that there is a folder here called tutorial3. If we open it, there's a config.yml and it's blank. For now though. Is now if we go in game and we walk over this block here, it'll say you are now allowed to walk. And now if we open this file, you can see this is my UUID and we have true next to it. And now if I close this, we can come over here and we can walk over this block, and now you can see it's set to false. So now the cool thing is I can manually set this to true, and now that I saved that, it'll still say that, but if I were to reload, I can now walk over. And so the cool thing that you can see here is that there's no array list we're dealing with, so I don't have to re-add myself because the config isn't cleared on every reload and restart. You can see now if I step on here, it'll go ahead and deny me again. So that's just a cool little aspect of configuration, but there's something else that we can do. Let's focus on these messages for a second because they're looking a little drab. Here's what we'll do. Go in here and we'll make a public string called prefix, and we'll just give it something like, give it 8L bracket 2L. We'll say staff doors, and we'll give it another one. What? Could you go away, please? I'm trying to record something.
You have to get ready for the car wash.
Okay, I'll get ready. I have to record something.
Now.
Please don't. Please go upstairs. I'm trying to record something and I can't have your voice in the back. So now that we have this prefix here, that's cool and all, but it'd be cooler if we didn't have to hard specify. So here's what we'll do. We'll go in here, and above the copy defaults, we'll say git config dot add default. We'll say prefix, and we'll give it that default value. And you'll see whenever we export, go over here, delete our config, and reload. See, there's a new config file. When we open it, there's nothing in there, which is because I forgot to set this to true. If I export this now, yeah, now that shows up. And so now that we've verified that that actually shows up, we can come before each of these messages and we can say git config dot get string prefix plus that. I'll put a little space there. So if we put this before all of our messages like this, just like that, if we go ahead and export this, give it a reload, you'll see that when we walk into this stuff, now we have that prefix there. We walk over here to say you're allowed to walk, you aren't allowed to walk. So here's what we can do. Just like before, how we could change our walk clearance, we can also change this prefix. So what I'm gonna do, just for example purposes, is I'm gonna throw a dash there. I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna reload, and you'll see now there's a dash, whereas before there was no dash. And so this is a really cool and easy way to do this. So that's a way that you can store like prefix values in a config for somebody to change. But what if you wanted to store something a little bit more complex, like a location? That is something that you can do, but that takes a little bit more advanced knowledge than what we already know, because that involves some math conversions. We'll delve into that a little bit in the next episode, most likely. But for now, that's this episode on configuration files. If you guys have any questions regarding configurations and what you can do with them, feel free to ask about it in the comment section down below. And yeah, have a good day, and thanks for watching.